The forest was alive with the sound of the storm. Rain hammered down in sharp sheets, and wind twisted through the trees like angry spirits. Leora ran blindly, her heart pounding as if it might burst from her chest. She could hear him behind her, her stepdad, shouting, cursing, and striking the ground with his heavy boots. Every branch she stumbled over, every root that caught her foot, reminded her of how vulnerable she was. She had to escape. She had to survive. Her lungs burned, and cold water ran down her face. The darkness pressed in from every side, and she felt the weight of fear, like a cloak around her shoulders. Then, through the heavy curtain of rain, she saw a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. A castle perched atop a jagged cliff, its tall towers disappearing into black clouds. A strange pull drew her to it, though instinct screamed that no human should go near. She stumbled through the muddy path that led to the castle, slipping on the wet stones, her dress torn by brambles. A lightning flash revealed the massive oak doors, scarred and ancient, standing slightly open as if inviting her in. She had no choice. Her stepdad's voice roared closer. Desperate, trembling, she slipped inside. The castle was unlike anything she had ever seen. The hall stretched higher than she could imagine, with shadows curling along the stone walls. Candles flickered on tall stands, casting strange, dancing shapes across the floor. The air was cold, but not just from the storm. It felt alive, charged, and aware of her presence. Leora crouched low and crept toward the far end of the hall, trying to find a place to hide. Her gaze fell upon a massive table in the center of the room, carved from dark oak with intricate symbols etched along its legs. Without thinking, she slipped beneath it, curling into herself, praying she wouldn't be seen. She could hear footsteps approaching, slow, deliberate, and heavy. Her heart froze. She dared not breathe too loudly. From above, a shadow moved. A man, or something like a man, sat at the head of the table. He was tall and pale, dressed in dark robes that seemed to drink in the candlelight. His hair was black as night, and his eyes were red, glowing faintly in the dim light, sharp and unblinking, as if they could see straight into her soul. Leora froze. She had heard of legends, stories told in whispers by frightened villagers, but she never believed them. Vampires, kings, immortals, creatures of shadow and power. She had thought they were just stories. But this man, this vampire king, was real, and he was looking right at her. She pressed herself further into the darkness, hoping he would not notice. But a faint smile curved his lips, and though he said nothing, the air shifted around him. It was as though the castle itself recognized him, bending to his will. Fear clawed at her chest, but there was also something else, a strange, curious pull, dangerous and magnetic. "You are far from home?" A deep, resonant voice finally spoke. The sound vibrated through the hall and settled around her like a cloak. Leora's breath caught in her throat. She didn't answer. Kalen, the vampire king, stood slowly. His movements were graceful, deadly, and silent, like a shadow taking form. He circled the table, eyes glowing, searching. Leora wanted to scream, to run, but her limbs refused to obey. She could feel the weight of his gaze, cold and penetrating, like ice against her skin. Yet there was an unspoken power in his presence that made her want to stay, to see, to understand. He stopped, just inches from where she hid. Leora's chest heaved, and her mind screamed to flee, yet she remained frozen. Kalen crouched slightly, his face lowering toward the shadow beneath the table. "Do not be afraid," he said softly, though the words did not soothe her. They were curious and strange, carrying an echo of something ancient and lonely. Then a sudden crash of thunder rattled the windows. Leora flinched, and her stepdad's voice cut through the storm, closer than ever. Kalen's eyes sharpened, his lips pressed into a thin line. Without another word, He moved to the doors, and with a simple gesture, the hall filled with shadows that blocked the intruder's path. Leora watched, stunned. As a human being, a cruel, violent human, was halted effortlessly by something beyond her understanding. Kaelin returned to the table and studied her again. "You are safe. For now," he said. "But this world is not meant for you." I didn't mean to," Leora whispered. "You mean to survive," Kaelin corrected softly. "That is clear." Leora nodded, though her knees shook. The storm outside seemed distant now, muffled by the walls of the castle. The shadows around them pulsed, aware of her presence. She realized she was caught in a world that was both terrifying and strangely beautiful, and she did not know if she wanted to leave. Kaelin stood, the candlelight reflecting off the silver of his fangs, just a glimpse, but enough to remind her of the danger. "You are human," he said. "Fragile. You must understand what you have entered." I just wanted to hide," she said, her voice small. "And yet you have found more than hiding," he murmured. Leora swallowed, trying to calm her racing heart. There was something hypnotic about him, terrifying, but compelling. Every instinct in her screamed to run, yet she was rooted to the spot. The storm outside faded into background noise, as the room, the castle, and the Vampire King became the center of her universe. Hours seemed to pass in silence. Kaelin moved with a grace that made shadows themselves seem alive. He studied the hall, then the table, then her hiding place, as if weighing the value of her very soul. Leora, though terrified, felt a flicker of trust. Something in his gaze suggested he would not harm her, not without reason. Suddenly, a loud banging echoed through the castle doors. Leora's stepdad had not given up. Her heart leaped into her throat. Kaelin's eyes flared red. He moved to the door with terrifying speed, and shadows swirled around him like a living army. The human outside screamed, stumbling back as if the darkness itself were a wall. Leora watched, unable to breathe. As Kaelin's figure became almost mythic, an immortal being of power and command, effortlessly controlling the elements of shadow, his eyes never leaving her. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the storm calmed, the human fled, and the hall returned to silence. Kaelin returned to the table and looked down at her. "You are brave," he said, "or foolish. Perhaps both. Either way, you have survived until now." "I thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet," he replied. "You are in my world now. And in this world, nothing is as it seems. Danger is never far, even from those who seem powerful." Leora's mind swirled with questions, fear, and awe. Every instinct in her body told her that the night was only the beginning, that her life had changed forever. The moment she stepped into this castle, the candle flames flickered, casting tall shadows across the walls. Kaelin's eyes glimmered, reflecting centuries of loneliness and power. Leora felt a strange warmth rise inside her, a feeling she did not yet understand, a mixture of fear, admiration, and something deeper, something dangerous. For the first time that night, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could survive. Perhaps, even in this shadowed, dangerous place, she could find something more than fear. But as she closed her eyes, trying to rest beneath the massive oak table, a shiver ran through her. She did not notice the faint smile that curved Kaelin's lips, or the shadow that lingered just beyond the candlelight, watching her with an intensity that no human should ever endure. And far away, in the storm-lashed forest, her stepdad's rage had not yet faded. The hunt was far from over. Cliffhanger. Leora drifted into a restless sleep, unaware that her sanctuary under the table was only temporary. Somewhere deep in the castle, a hidden chamber stirred, and a secret that could change both her fate and Kaelin's was awakening. The night was far from over, and the storm was only the beginning. The castle's halls were silent, but not empty. Leora followed Kaelin through corridors, carved from dark stone. Her steps light, careful. Each torch flickered in the drafty passages, casting shadows that danced like living things on the walls. She did not speak, afraid to break the spell of quiet authority that hung around him. The storm had faded, leaving only the echo of dripping water and the soft rustle of her dress. Kaelin moved effortlessly, each step measured and deliberate. His eyes were fixed ahead, yet he seemed aware of every corner, every shadow, every potential threat. Leora could not stop staring at him. His presence was overwhelming, both terrifying and magnetic. She did not understand the pull she felt, the strange warmth that defied logic. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the castle. The walls were lined with ancient tapestries depicting battles, kingdoms, and creatures of shadow. The floor was polished stone, cold and smooth underfoot. Kaelin gestured for Leora to stay. "Sit," he said, his voice soft but commanding. "You will need strength for what comes next." Leora sank onto the edge of a bench, her hands gripping the cool wood. She watched as Kaelin moved to the center of the room, standing beneath a shaft of moonlight that poured through a tall window. The glow caught his pale skin and the dark gleam of his hair, giving him an almost unreal appearance. He seemed older than time, yet his movements were fluid, precise, alive. "You have been hunted," Kaelin began, his eyes meeting hers, "by a man who should have protected you, not harmed you. Tell me, why?" Leora swallowed, her voice trembled. "My stepdad. He wants to control me. He hurts me. I had nowhere else to run." Tears burned her eyes, but she held them back. She could not show weakness. "Not fully. Not here." Kaelin's expression softened for a brief moment. "I see." He stepped closer, the air around him shifting. "You have courage. Fear has not broken you, though it would have broken most." She flinched as he came near, instinctively shrinking back. I don't know what to do. I only know I need to survive." "Survival is more than escaping," Kaelin said. "It is about understanding the world you have entered, and the choices you will face within it. You are here now, in my realm, and nothing is as simple as it seems." Leora's mind raced. Kaelin's eyes darkened, and he sank into a chair. "I am Kaelin, King of the Shadows. I have ruled this castle and its people for centuries. My blood carries a curse, one that separates me from mortals. My touch, my presence, can be dangerous." Leora's breath caught. "A curse?" "Yes," Kaelin said. "Centuries ago, a witch betrayed me. She bound my soul to this castle, to its shadows, and to immortality that comes with a price. I cannot walk among humans freely. I cannot form bonds without endangering them. And yet," his voice trailed, and for a moment, his eyes were not red, but dark, haunted, and almost human. "Yet something about you draws me in." Leora felt heat rise to her cheeks. She did not know what to say. She wanted to run, and yet she could not. There was a strange pull in the way he looked at her, an intensity that made her pulse race. She had never felt anything like it before. Kaelin rose and walked to a window, staring out into the dark moor beyond the castle. "You may wonder why I protect you. It is not because I care for humans in general. They fear me. They despise me. But you," his voice softened, almost a whisper, "you are different. You do not tremble in fear at my presence alone. You hide, yes, but you do not lose yourself entirely. That is rare." Leora's heart ached. She had spent her life being hunted, ignored, and hurt. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. For the first time, she felt seen, and yet fear remained. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said. Kalen turned, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "Trust is earned," he said, "and sometimes it is forced by circumstance. You have little choice now." Hours passed in silence as Leora tried to absorb everything. She wandered the chamber cautiously, noticing the tapestries, the weapons displayed on the walls, the strange symbols etched into the floor. The castle was alive with history, with secrets she could not yet understand. Then, as if summoned by thought, a soft knock echoed through a hidden doorway. A figure appeared, a servant of the shadows, pale, graceful, silent. Kalen did not speak, but the servant bowed and left behind a small tray of food. Leora stared at it, unsure if she should eat. The hunger was real, gnawing at her stomach after hours of running and hiding. "You must eat," Kalen said, his voice gentle but firm. She nodded, taking small bites, feeling both gratitude and unease. The food was warm and nourishing, and yet she felt like an intruder in a world she could barely understand. Kalen watched her closely, and she sensed his thoughts as clearly as if he spoke them. Night fell fully, and the castle grew colder. Leora shivered, wrapping herself in a dark cloak provided by one of the shadowed servants. She wanted to ask questions, to understand this place, but the words stuck in her throat. Then, without warning, the castle shook with the sound of distant battle. Leora froze. What is happening?" Kalen's eyes flared red, and his movements became sharp, predatory. "Rivals. They seek to exploit my curse, to strike at me while I am distracted. You must stay hidden, but you must also be ready to act." "Act?" Leora's voice trembled. "Yes," Kalen said. "Courage is not just surviving fear. Sometimes it is facing it, and protecting what you value, even if you do not yet understand it." Before she could respond, a shadow moved along the wall. Leora gasped, and Kalen's hand shot out, gripping her shoulder not roughly, but firmly. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I will guide you. You will learn quickly, or you will not survive." The sounds grew louder: footsteps, voices, the faint metallic ring of weapons. Kalen led Leora to a hidden staircase that spiraled downward into the depths of the castle. The air grew colder, the shadows thicker. Leora followed silently, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast chamber filled with the hum of power. Ancient runes glowed along the walls, and shadowed figures moved with precision, preparing defenses. Kalen approached one of them and spoke in a language Leora did not recognize. The figure bowed and disappeared into the darkness. "You see," Kalen said, "even in a world of shadows, order exists. Even I am not without opposition. And now, you are part of this order, whether you wish it or not." Leora felt fear and awe in equal measure. She had come to this castle to hide, to escape a cruel stepdad, and instead, she had been thrust into a world of immortal power, danger, and dark magic. And yet, she could not deny the strange pull she felt toward Kalen. There was a magnetism in his presence, an intensity that made her pulse quicken, even as it reminded her that he could destroy her without effort. Night deepened, and the castle settled into tense anticipation. Kalen stood beside her, a silent sentinel, his gaze sweeping the room, the walls, the shadows. "You must rest," he said at last. "But know this: the night will bring trials. You will need to be ready." Leora nodded, though her mind was restless. She had survived the storm, survived her stepdad, survived the initial encounter with Kalen. But now, She understood that survival was only the beginning. The castle, the shadows, and the Vampire King himself held secrets she had not yet begun to fathom. As she lay on a bed of dark velvet provided by a shadowed servant, she could not stop thinking about Kalen, about his curse, his power, and the strange kindness beneath his terrifying exterior. She wondered what it would mean to trust him, to stand beside him in a world so different from anything she had known. Then, in the deepest silence of the night, she noticed something, a small envelope placed delicately on the bedside table. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a note, written in Kalen's precise, flowing script. The curse that binds me can only be touched by human courage and blood. One choice could change both our fates forever. Beware the shadows, and beware what your heart desires. Her breath caught. She did not fully understand the meaning, but she knew one thing. Her life, her heart, and her very future were now tied to Kalen in ways she could not yet comprehend. Cliffhanger. Outside the castle, in the silent moor under the cold moonlight, figures watched. The rivals were moving closer, and their intentions were clear. They sought not just Kalen, but her as well. Leora realized, with a cold dread, that the safety she felt under Kalen's shadow was fragile. The night had only just begun. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light across the jagged cliffs surrounding the castle. Inside, the halls were quiet, but the air was heavy with anticipation. Leora sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the note Kalen had left her. Its words had echoed in her mind all night. One choice could change both our fates forever. She didn't fully understand it, but she felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her. Kalen stood near the window, gazing out at the dark moor. His red eyes flickered as the shadows moved beyond the castle walls. Figures creeping closer. Rival vampires ready to strike. Leora shivered, not from the cold, but from the tension that wrapped the castle like a living thing. "You are ready," Kalen said suddenly, his voice calm, but carrying authority that made her straighten instinctively. "Do you understand what is at stake?" "I think so," she whispered. "But I don't know if I can do what you ask." "You must," he said. "Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting even when fear is all you feel." Her heart pounded, but she nodded. She had survived the storm, survived her stepdad, and survived the first night in Kalen's shadow. She could survive this too. The castle doors groaned under the wind as a shadow fell across the threshold. Kalen's hand brushed hers briefly, a light touch, but it sent a pulse through her like fire. She noticed it and looked at him. His gaze softened for a moment, almost human in its warmth. Then it hardened again, filled with the resolve of centuries. "Stay close," he said. "Do not falter." They moved through the halls, Kalen leading, Leora following. Shadows clung to him, twisting and shifting at his command. She had never seen anything so powerful, so alive, so terrifying, and yet she felt a strange comfort in his presence. He was both protector and mystery, danger and salvation. As they reached the grand hall, the rival vampires made their move. Figures leaped from the shadows, weapons glinting in the moonlight. Leora froze, fear gripping her. But Kalen's hand found hers again. "Trust yourself," he whispered. The hall erupted in motion. Kalen's shadows twisted around the intruders, striking with precision, forcing them back. Leora watched, heart racing, as the Vampire King moved like a shadowed storm, unstoppable and majestic. And yet, she knew the fight was not just his. If she wished to survive, she would have to act too. A rival lunged toward her, and instinct took over. Leora dodged, grabbed a fallen candle holder, and swung. It struck the vampire, sending him sprawling back into the shadows. Her pulse raced, But she realized she had acted without thinking and survived. Kalen glanced at her briefly, a flicker of pride in his eyes. The battle raged. Shadows clashed with dark figures, the air thick with tension and unspoken power. Leora moved cautiously, following Kalen's lead, trusting him, learning the rhythm of his world. Every movement carried life and death intertwined. And she began to understand that she was no longer just a human running from danger. She was part of this shadowed realm now, a participant in its struggle. Finally, the last of the rival vampires was forced into retreat, disappearing into the moor under the pale moonlight. The castle was still, save for the echoes of the battle. Leora sank to the floor, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. She had never felt such fear and such exhilaration in her life. Kalen approached, his expression unreadable. "You have done well," he said softly. "You are braver than most humans who enter this world." I was just trying to survive," she said, voice shaky. "Survival is never just about staying alive," he replied. "It is about understanding the strength within yourself. You have found it tonight." For a moment, they stood together in silence. The only sound, the flickering of the torches and the distant whisper of wind outside. Leora felt a warmth she could not explain, a pull toward Kalen that went beyond fear or gratitude. She realized that this world, dark, dangerous, and strange, had opened something inside her she had never known. Courage, trust, and longing. Kalen's gaze softened, and he knelt slightly, close enough for her to see the faint shadow of centuries behind his eyes. "There is more to come," he said. "The curse I bear. It is not fully broken. You carry a choice, one that could bind us forever, or leave us apart. But I will not force you. You must decide." Leora's hands clenched at her sides. She had felt the pull between them since the first night. The strange connection that seemed impossible, yet undeniable. She wanted to run, to resist, but she could not. Every instinct, every heartbeat, told her that her life had changed the moment she hid under his table. Kalen extended his hand, not commanding, but inviting. "Step forward," he said. "Do not fear what your heart desires. Fear is always present, but it does not define you." She hesitated, then took his hand. The touch was cold and warm all at once, a paradox that made her shiver. She could feel a pulse of power flowing from him, not harmful, but transformative. Her mind raced. What would happen if she accepted? What if the curse truly bound them? And yet, she could not deny the pull, the strange sense of rightness in standing beside him. "Very well," she whispered. Kalen's expression remained unreadable, but the red in his eyes softened. "Then we shall face it together." He led her to the chamber where the runes glowed faintly on the floor. Shadows swirled around them, alive and obedient. Kalen extended his hand, and Leora felt the first brush of the curse against her skin. It was not pain, but a strange energy, a pull that connected them deeper than either could have imagined. Her vision blurred, and yet she did not falter. The shadows around them twisted, reacting to their bond. Leora felt the fear of centuries, the weight of Kalen's loneliness, and the raw power of the curse. She did not resist, it was terrifying, but she allowed herself to trust, to let the energy flow through her. Then, with a flash of light and a rush of wind, the curse began to shift. Kalen's eyes glowed brighter, the red softening to a deep crimson, and the shadows around the castle seemed to sigh. He looked at her, a rare smile flickering across his lips. "It is done. Partially," he said. "The curse is weakened, but not gone. You have changed it with your courage." Leora sank to her knees, exhausted, but filled with a strange sense of triumph. She had faced fear, survived danger, and helped alter a curse that had lasted centuries. And through it all, She had stood beside Kalen, no longer just a frightened human, but a partner in his world. Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have more strength than you realize," he said, "and perhaps more heart than I could have hoped for after centuries of solitude." Leora looked up at him, her chest still racing. Kalen's gaze softened, and for a long moment, he did not answer with words. Instead, he reached forward, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "I do," he said finally. "I trust you. And I will not let anything harm you again, if I can help it." For the first time, Leora felt safe not just from her stepdad, not just from the dangers outside the castle, but in a world where shadows and power had always ruled. She felt seen, respected, and strangely cherished. The storm outside had ended, and the first light of dawn touched the castle walls. Pale sunlight filtered through the high windows, casting silver across the stone floors. For centuries, Kalen had not seen the dawn inside his halls. Yet now, with Leora at his side, it seemed almost possible. But as they stood together, feeling the fragile peace of the morning, a whisper drifted through the castle, a voice carried by shadows older than time. "The true challenge has only begun," it said. Kalen's eyes darkened, and Leora felt a shiver run through her. Their trials were not over. The world beyond the castle still waited, filled with danger, mystery, and forces they could not yet understand. Yet, for the first time, Leora smiled. She had faced fear, survived impossible odds, and found a connection that transcended danger. She had changed Kalen's world, and perhaps he had changed hers. Hand in hand, they stepped into the dawn together, the castle behind them, filled with shadows and secrets, and a future uncertain, yet full of possibility. The storm had passed, but the adventure was only beginning.